Thanks for tuning in to Crazy Mango Stories. Give a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell for more betrayal stories. I wasn't supposed to hear it. I mean, who'd expect to pick up a pair of headphones ready for some mindless escape, only to have your entire world crash down around you? But there it was. Clear as day. My wife's voice, intimate and familiar, saying things I'd never imagined would flow so freely from her lips. The words carved themselves into my brain, every syllable a dagger, slicing through the very fabric of what I thought was our life. And no fun and games today, guys. My cuckold is a little irritated that I am spending time here. It felt like a hammer to the chest. The word cuckold wasn't even what struck me hardest. It was the casual cruelty in her tone, like she was talking about some stray dog she had to placate. She wasn't worried or hesitant. She was amused. Then, a man's voice, unknown but dripping with lust, chimed in. Damn, I wanted to have some fun tonight. He wasn't just disappointed, he was entitled. Like my wife was his possession too. She giggled in response, a sound that once would have warmed me. Now, it just chilled me to the bone. At least you two can comfort each other. I'm feeling frisky too, but I need to keep my full calm and relaxed. Besides, he's not a bad lover, and I need to make the most of that. I ripped the headphones off, my head spinning. I didn't need to hear more. I had heard enough. Enough to know that everything was a lie. How did we get here? Gloria wasn't always this person, at least, not the version of her I knew. I met her in college. She was the kind of woman who turned heads effortlessly, and I had to summon every ounce of confidence I had just to ask her out. To my shock, she said yes. Fast forward a few years, and we were married, settled into what I thought was a pretty good life. Sure, things had gotten routine. Work, bills, the usual grind, but every marriage faces that, right? I told myself it was normal. We were happy, or at least I thought we were. Now, looking back, I realized there were signs, subtle and small at first, like cracks in the foundation, but I ignored them. There was the way she'd laugh a little too hard at someone else's joke, the mysterious text she would quickly swipe away when I got too close to her phone. But I trusted her. I loved her. We were building a life together, or so I thought. The moment those words my cuckold sank in, everything snapped into place. The late nights out with friends, the increasing emotional distance, the sex that had become mechanical, a chore. She was playing a role with me, while her true desires were fulfilled elsewhere. And I, like a fool, had been none the wiser. I spent the next few hours pacing around the house, unable to sit still. My mind raced, replaying every memory, every conversation with Gloria. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, but it did nothing to dull the searing pain in my chest. I wanted to confront her, to demand answers, but at the same time I couldn't bear to look at her. What was I supposed to say? Hey honey, I just overheard you calling me a cuckold while planning your next sexcapade. Yeah, that would go over well.
As much as I wanted to confront her right then and there, I needed more than just those words on the headphones. I needed to know who the other guy was, or guys. Apparently, I needed the truth. But more than that, I needed control. I wasn't going to fly off the handle, get into a screaming match, and give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. No, I was going to play this smart. If she wanted to make me look like a fool, I'd show her just how foolish I could be.
So I went digging. Gloria wasn't as slick as she thought she was. I found her old phone in the back of a drawer. It was password protected, but we'd shared so much over the years I knew it. I felt like a goddamn detective as I scrolled through old texts and emails, the bile rising in my throat with every discovery. Her lover's name was Brad, of course it was. The same Brad who she'd casually mentioned a few times over the last year. Just a friend from work, she'd said. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. How could I have been so blind? But it wasn't just Brad, the messages revealed more others. She wasn't just cheating, she was fully immersed in some twisted world I hadn't even realized she was part of. A network of hookups, parties, and indulgence. And I was the unsuspecting idiot holding everything together. When Gloria walked through the front door that evening, smiling like nothing had happened, I had to force myself not to explode. She kissed me on the cheek, asking how my day was. I couldn't help but notice the faint scent of cologne that wasn't mine. That same sickly sweet smell I'd started noticing more frequently in recent months. I played along, told her I had a good day, but inside I was preparing. This wasn't over by a long shot, and I wasn't going to be the one left in the dark any longer. I was about to turn the tables, and she had no idea. It took everything I had not to throw it in her face that night. Watching Gloria, with her forced smile, moving around our kitchen like the perfect wife, making small talk about her day, was infuriating. Every word that came out of her mouth was just noise to me. The real her, the woman I'd thought I married, had become a stranger overnight. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more than a few messages and a snide comment on a headphone recording. If this was going to end, it would end on my terms. I wasn't about to let her leave me gutted, holding the broken pieces of our life while she walked away clean. No, I was going to make sure she regretted every minute of this. So I started planning. That night, as she went to bed early claiming she was tired from a long day at work, I stayed up, pretending to finish some reports for the office. In reality, I was doing some digging of my own. If Brad was her lover, I had to know more about him, and I had to know how deep this went. What exactly had I missed? Brad Turner. He wasn't just some random guy. He was wealthy, successful, and connected. Probably how he'd managed to stay under the radar for so long. From what I could gather, Brad had a reputation in certain circles. He wasn't just a businessman, he was a charmer, a seducer, the kind of guy who made women feel like they were the only one in the room, even if they were just another in a long line of conquests. The type that got off on manipulating people, bending them to his will. I figured Gloria wasn't the first. She was probably just the latest in a series of affairs for Brad. What bothered me, though, was that she knew this. She had to. How many times had she and I sat at the dinner table, discussing our mutual friends' affairs and indiscretions, shaking our heads at the lies, and now she was wrapped up in one herself, acting like it was just some casual fun. What I didn't expect to find were the photos, buried deep in one of her cloud accounts. Hidden under layers of mundane albums from vacations and family events, there they were. Pictures of her and Brad. At first, they were nothing more than flirtatious posing together at parties, drinks in hand, standing a little too close. But as I scrolled further, they became more intimate. Her smile was different in these photos. It was the smile I hadn't seen in a long time, the one that was reserved for when she felt truly alive. And it wasn't for me. I slammed my laptop shut. I couldn't look at them anymore. My hands were shaking, my breath coming in shallow, ragged bursts. My wife, my Gloria, was someone else's plaything. The next morning, everything seemed normal, or at least, that's how Gloria acted. She made coffee, asked about my plans for the day, and gave me a kiss on the cheek before heading out the door, as if nothing had changed. It was all a lie, and I was playing my part in it, letting her go through her routine like she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of our marriage. I watched her leave, her heels clicking on the pavement as she walked to the car. The woman who had just kissed me goodbye wasn't the same woman I had married. This Gloria was a stranger, someone who could smile and lie without hesitation, someone who could keep her secrets hidden beneath layers of charm and casual deceit. I followed her. Yeah, it was a low move, but I had no choice. I wasn't going to sit at home while she met up with Brad, or whoever else she had lined up for the day. I needed to see it with my own eyes. She drove across town. Not to work as I'd expected, but to a small cafe on the outskirts of the city. It was one of those artsy spots with exposed brick walls and overpriced coffee. Not exactly the place I imagined for a midday rendezvous. I parked a few blocks away and slipped inside, keeping my distance. She was already sitting at a corner table, sipping from a mug, her eyes scanning the entrance every few seconds. She was waiting for someone. Sure enough, a few minutes later, Brad walked in, casually dressed but with the confidence of a man who owned the world. He spotted her immediately, and the way her face lit up when she saw him made my stomach churn. That smile again, the one I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't forced. It was real. She stood up to greet him, and they embraced like old lovers. My heart sank. This was it. This was the moment I had dreaded. Seeing them together, in the flesh, made it all too real. They sat down, their bodies angled toward each other, speaking in low tones. I couldn't hear them, but I didn't need to. The way they leaned in close, the subtle touches of their hands, the way she laughed, really laughed, it was all the confirmation I needed. She was his. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. After Brad left, Gloria lingered for a few more minutes, finishing her coffee and checking her phone. I watched as she tapped out a message, probably to him, before getting up and leaving. I didn't follow her this time. I had seen enough. It was time to confront her. But not yet. Not like this. I needed to wait to gather more. If this was going to end, it wasn't going to be on her terms. No, I wanted her to feel the full weight of what she'd done. So, I called in a favor. A friend of mine, Paul, worked in IT. He was the kind of guy who could hack into just about anything without leaving a trace. I didn't tell him the full story, just enough to get him on board. I asked him to dig into Gloria's phone, her emails, everything. He agreed, and within a few hours, I had full access to her entire digital life. What I found was worse than I imagined. It wasn't just Brad, there were others. Names I didn't recognize, messages filled with flirty banter, innuendos, and outright sexual promises. Gloria had been living a double life, and I'd been completely blind to it. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone who thrived on deception and betrayal. I wanted to vomit, but I wasn't about to roll over and let her win. If she thought she could play me, she was in for a rude awakening. I started documenting everything: emails, texts, photos, all of it. If this was going to end in a divorce, I'd make sure I walked away with everything. Gloria could keep her lovers, but she wasn't going to take anything else from me. That night, when she came home, I didn't say a word. I played it cool, just like I had before. She asked about my day, and I smiled, told her everything was fine. Inside, though, I was boiling. Every touch, every word out of her mouth made my skin crawl. But I wasn't ready to confront her yet, not until I had all my pieces in place. Let her think she had the upper hand. Let her think she was still fooling me. Soon enough, the tables would turn. By the time I had all the evidence, I was numb. It had been weeks of playing the unsuspecting husband while Gloria carried on with her secret life. I was living a lie, waiting for the right moment to tear off the mask she wore so easily. But for now, I had to pretend. Pretend I didn't know that the woman next to me in bed wasn't really mine anymore if she ever had been. I was ready to confront her. The evidence was undeniable. I had everything: the photos, the texts, the videos, even phone calls. I knew every detail of her twisted little affair. I knew about Brad's penthouse apartment, where they'd meet during her lunch breaks. I knew about the late-night phone calls where she'd laugh and flirt while I was asleep in the next room. Hell, I even knew that they had a trip planned for the following weekend, some secluded cabin up in the mountains where they could screw their brains out without having to worry about me. But Gloria had no idea I was onto her. She still thought she was in control, that I was her clueless husband who couldn't see the deception staring him in the face. Friday night rolled around, and I knew it was time. She came home late, claiming she'd had to stay late at the office. But I knew better. I'd already tracked her to Brad's place earlier that afternoon. She looked a little too put together for someone who'd supposedly been working all day. The faint smell of cologne on her clothes was enough to confirm where she'd been. I watched her as she walked through the door, tossing her bag on the couch like she didn't have a care in the world. She smiled at me, that fake smile she'd perfected over the years, and asked, "How was your day?" I stared at her, the anger boiling just below the surface, but I didn't let it show. I had learned to hide it well. "It was good," I said casually, pretending to be engrossed in a football game on TV. She leaned in and kissed my cheek, her lips brushing against my skin in a way that now felt like poison. How many times had she kissed him like that? How many lies had those lips told? "I'm going to take a shower," she said, already heading toward the stairs. "Okay," I muttered, barely looking up. I waited for her to disappear before pulling out my phone and checking the texts I'd intercepted. Sure enough, there was a message from Brad, sent just an hour ago. "Brad, had a great time today. Can't wait for this weekend. We're going to make up for lost time, babe. Gloria, you better be ready. I've been thinking about you all day." I clenched my fist, nearly crushing the phone in my hand. The weekend. It was supposed to be their romantic getaway, their chance to be together without me in the way. Well, they were in for a surprise. The next morning, Gloria was already up and moving around by the time I got out of bed. She was packing, claiming she was going on a girls' trip with some friends from college. I almost laughed at the ridiculousness of it all. The lies had become so absurd that I wondered if she even believed them herself. "You sure you're okay with me going?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. I smiled, pretending not to care. "Of course. You deserve a break. Have fun." She beamed at me, clearly relieved. In her mind, she'd gotten away with it once again. She had no idea what was coming. As soon as she left, I made my move. I called Paul, my IT friend, and told him to meet me at Brad's cabin. I already had the address. It was listed in one of the texts. Between Gloria and Brad, I wasn't going to confront them just yet, but I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with. The cabin was about 2 hours away, nestled deep in the mountains. It was the kind of place you'd imagine in a romance novel, secluded, surrounded by trees, and with a perfect view of the valley below. The air was crisp, the silence almost oppressive as I drove up the long, winding road toward the property. My heart raced with a mix of anticipation and dread. I knew what I was going to find, but part of me still hoped I was wrong. Paul was already there when I arrived, parked a little ways down the road to avoid suspicion. He nodded at me as I pulled up next to him, his face grim. "You ready for this?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "Yeah, let's do it." We hiked the rest of the way to the cabin, sticking to the tree line to stay out of sight. From the outside, it looked peaceful. There were no cars in the driveway yet, but I knew it wouldn't be long before they arrived. Paul set up his equipment, planting small cameras around the perimeter of the cabin and installing microphones near the windows. He was a pro at this. Years of working in surveillance had made him quick and efficient. Within an hour, we had the place wired. I'd have eyes and ears on everything that happened inside. By the time we were done, it was late afternoon. I had just enough time to get back to the house before Gloria would suspect anything. That night, I sat in the living room, my laptop open in front of me, watching the feed from the cabin. I could see the front door, the living room, even the bedroom. I felt like a voyeur spying on my own wife, but at this point, I didn't care. I needed to know. I needed to see it with my own eyes. It didn't take long. Just after 8 p.m., Brad's car pulled up to the cabin. I watched as Gloria climbed out, laughing and smiling like she didn't have a care in the world. She was wearing a tight red dress, the kind she never wore around me anymore. It clung to her curves, showing off the body that I once thought was mine alone. Brad was right behind her, his hands all over her as they made their way inside. I watched, my stomach churning, as they moved through the cabin, touching, kissing, completely oblivious to the fact that they were being recorded. Gloria giggled like a schoolgirl, her voice dripping with excitement. "I've been waiting for this all week," she whispered, pulling him toward the bedroom. I couldn't watch anymore. My hands were shaking as I closed the laptop, bile rising in my throat. I had seen enough, but I wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. The next morning, I was waiting for her when she came home. She walked through the door, sunglasses on. Looking a little too refreshed for someone who'd supposedly spent the weekend with her girlfriends, I watched her as she set her bag down. Her face calm, her movements casual. She didn't know. She had no idea what was about to happen. "Hey," she said, smiling as she walked toward me. "Miss me?" I didn't answer. I just stared at her, the silence thick between us. Her smile faltered. "What's wrong?" I stood up slowly, my hands in my pockets, and looked her dead in the eyes. "Where were you this weekend?" She blinked, caught off guard. "I told you I was with." "Don't," I interrupted, my voice cold and sharp. "Don't lie to me. Not anymore." Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. She took a step back, as if the physical distance could somehow protect her from the truth. "What are you talking about?" "I know, Gloria," I said, my voice calm but filled with barely contained rage. "I know everything." She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. For the first time in weeks, she looked unsure, vulnerable. Her mask was starting to slip. "I've seen the texts, the emails, the photos." I continued, stepping closer. "I know about Brad, I know about all of them." Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to protest, but I didn't let her. "You think I'm stupid?" I snarled, my control slipping. "You think I didn't know what you were doing all this time? I've been watching you. I've been following you. You're not as clever as you think, Gloria." She stared at me, her eyes wide, her hands trembling. "Adam, I don't." My voice was cold, final. "We're done." Gloria stood there, frozen, her face drained of color as my words echoed in the silence between us. The woman who had so easily lied, cheated, and betrayed me was now reduced to a trembling wreck. For the first time, the real Gloria was standing in front of me, stripped of her masks, and she looked terrified. "Adam, please." "Let me explain," she finally stammered, her voice small, as if she were still trying to find some way out, some loophole in the disaster she had created. I scoffed, shaking my head. "Explain? You think there's anything you could say that would make this better?" I could feel the anger rising again, hotter than before. All the sleepless nights, all the second guessing, all the doubts she had planted in my mind, it all came rushing back in a flood of rage. She reached for me, but I stepped back, keeping the distance between us. I couldn't bear to let her touch me. "Not now. Not ever again." "Adam, I'm sorry." Sorry," I snapped, cutting her off again. "You're sorry. Sorry for what, Gloria? For sleeping with Brad? For screwing God knows how many other men? Or are you just sorry you got caught?" Her lips quivered and she tried to speak, but the words seemed stuck in her throat. She knew there was no way out. No excuses, no explanations. The facade had crumbled, and all that was left was the ugly truth. "I never meant for it to go this far," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I didn't want to hurt you." "Didn't want to hurt me?" I laughed bitterly. "You didn't think about me at all, Gloria. You didn't care. You just wanted your fun, didn't you?" Her eyes welled up with tears, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let her crocodile tears manipulate me. I wasn't falling for it this time. She tried again, stepping toward me, her hands outstretched like she could somehow bridge the chasm between us. "Adam, I know I messed up, but please, I love you. I still love you." That was it. That was the moment I snapped. I closed the gap between us in 2 quick strides, standing so close I could see the panic in her eyes, smell the faint remnants of Brad's cologne still clinging to her clothes. "Don't you dare say you love me," I growled, my voice low and venomous. "You don't know what love is. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. If you loved me, you wouldn't have turned our marriage into a joke." She flinched at my words, but I didn't care. She deserved to feel every ounce of the pain she'd caused me, every single moment of agony I'd endured while she was out living her double life. For a long, suffocating moment, neither of us spoke. She stood there, defeated, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for some way out, some escape. But there was none. Not this time. "Why, Gloria?" I finally asked, my voice softer but no less intense. "Why did you do it?" Her eyes flickered with guilt, and she opened her mouth to respond, but then stopped. She swallowed hard, avoiding my gaze. I don't know," she whispered. "It just happened." "Bullshit," I shook my head, my teeth gritted in frustration. "You don't just accidentally fall into bed with someone. This wasn't a mistake, Gloria. This was a choice. You chose to betray me over and over again." She wiped at her eyes, smudging her makeup, but the tears kept coming. "I was lonely. Adam, you were always working, always busy. I felt. I don't know, invisible." Invisible, my voice rose again, disbelief dripping from every word. "So this is my fault now. I wasn't around enough, so you had to find comfort in Brad's bed. Or was it someone else's bed that week?" Her face twisted in pain, but she didn't deny it. She couldn't. The truth had already been laid bare. She sank onto the couch, her head in her hands, sobbing. "I never wanted it to be like this. I never thought I'd lose you." "You lost me the second you decided to lie," I said coldly, crossing my arms. "You didn't just betray our marriage, Gloria. You betrayed every promise we ever made to each other." Her shoulders shook as she wept, but the sight of her crying didn't move me, not anymore. I had no sympathy left for her, no pity. She had spent it all when she made the choice to let another man into our bed, our life. "I know you hate me," she whispered between sobs, "and I deserve it. I deserve everything you're saying." I didn't respond. I couldn't. Hate didn't even begin to cover what I felt. Betrayal, disgust, rage, it was all swirling inside me, too heavy to put into words. For a while, the only sound in the room was her crying. I stood there, watching, waiting for the anger to subside. But it didn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Brad. I saw the photos, the texts, the smiles she gave him that were supposed to be mine. When the sobs finally slowed, she looked up at me, her face streaked with tears and mascara. Is there any chance we can fix this?" I almost laughed again. The audacity of her even asking that question after everything she'd done. "No, Gloria," I said, my voice cold and final. "There's no fixing this. You made sure of that." She nodded, defeated, her shoulders slumping as if the weight of her guilt had finally crushed her. "What happens now?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Now I'm filing for divorce." Her eyes widened in shock, but she didn't argue. She knew it was coming. She knew there was no saving this. "And before you even think about trying to screw me over," I added, "I have everything. The photos, the texts, the videos, everything. If you try to fight me in court, I'll make sure you walk away with nothing." She stared at me, her mouth slightly open, but she didn't say a word. She knew I wasn't bluffing. She knew I had the power now. "I'm giving you a chance to walk away quietly," I continued. "You sign the divorce papers, and I'll let you keep whatever dignity you have left. But if you don't, if you even think about fighting me on this, I'll destroy you." Her lower lip trembled, but she nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of the situation. I'll sign." The silence that followed was suffocating. We were both trapped in the aftermath of everything that had fallen apart. The life we had built, the years we had spent together, they were nothing more than rubble now, scattered at our feet. "You should go," I said quietly, breaking the silence. She looked up at me, her eyes red and swollen. But she didn't argue. She stood up slowly, gathering her things with shaky hands. For a moment she hesitated, as if she wanted to say something, but the words never came. She just nodded, tears still glistening on her cheeks, and walked out the door. I stood there in the quiet, listening to the sound of her footsteps fading down the hall. It was over. The marriage, the lies, the betrayal, it was all over. But I didn't feel relief. Not yet. The rage was still there, simmering just below the surface, reminding me of everything she had taken from me. The masks were off now, and all that was left was the cold, harsh reality. But the game wasn't over. Not yet. The house felt empty. For the first time in years, the space that once carried the warmth of a home now felt like a cold, hollow shell. Gloria's absence didn't bring the peace I had hoped for. It brought something much darker: anger, bitterness, and a creeping sense of dread about what came next. The divorce would be ugly. There was no doubt about that. But it wasn't the legal battle that haunted me. It was the thought of what Gloria might try to do next. I knew her well enough to understand that her guilt would soon turn into something else: self-preservation, manipulation, and, eventually, retaliation. She wasn't the type to go down quietly. Even after our confrontation, even after she left with her tail between her legs, I knew she'd be plotting something, and I was ready. It didn't take long for her to try. A few days after she left, I got a text from her: "We need to talk." I didn't respond. I didn't need to hear more of her excuses, her lies. I was done playing her games. But Gloria didn't like being ignored. Within hours, my phone rang, her name lighting up the screen. Again, I didn't answer. The voicemail she left was full of the same fake sweetness she'd used throughout our marriage, trying to coax me into a conversation. "Adam, please? I just want to talk about this. I know things have been hard, but we can figure this out. Call me." The desperation in her voice was palpable, but I wasn't buying it. She wasn't trying to make amends. She was trying to regain control. She was trying to find a way back in, to somehow fix her crumbling world. But I wasn't about to give her the chance. I blocked her number that afternoon. For a while, things were quiet. Too quiet. It wasn't like Gloria to disappear without a fight. Every day that passed without hearing from her only made me more suspicious. I knew she was up to something, and I knew it would be bad. It was just a matter of time. Then, one night, I came home to find the front door of the house slightly ajar. My stomach dropped. I knew I had locked it before leaving that morning. Every instinct in my body told me something was wrong, but I pushed the door open anyway, stepping inside cautiously. The house was dark, the only light spilling in from the street lamp outside. Everything looked normal at first glance, nothing out of place. No sign of a break-in. But then I noticed the faint smell of her perfume, the kind she only wore on special occasions, the kind that had once intoxicated me, but now made me sick to my stomach. I called her name, my voice echoing through the silence. No answer. My pulse quickened, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. She had been here. I knew it. But where was she now? I moved through the house, checking every room. Nothing. No sign of her anywhere. But when I reached the bedroom, the pit in my stomach deepened. There on my pillow was an envelope thick, white and pristine, as if it had been carefully placed there for maximum impact. My name was written on it in her delicate handwriting. The sight of it sent a cold shiver down my spine. I hesitated for a moment, the temptation to rip it apart warring with the dread of what might be inside, but eventually I opened it. Inside was a stack of photos. At first I didn't understand what I was looking at. They were all of me walking to work, sitting in my car, grabbing lunch with a friend. Innocent enough on the surface, but the implication was clear. She had been watching me, stalking me. And then I saw the last photo. It was of me standing in front of the cabin, the same cabin where she had met Brad, the same cabin I had wired with cameras. Only this time the image was blurry, like it had been taken from a distance. It was clear that she knew I had been there, watching her. She knew about the surveillance, about everything I had done. At the bottom of the pile was a handwritten note, just 5 words, but it was enough to set my blood boiling. "You're not as smart, Adam." I clenched the photos in my fist, my mind racing. Gloria wasn't going to just walk away from this. She had played the victim, but now she was ready to strike back. The message was clear, she wasn't going down without a fight. If she couldn't have me, then she was going to make sure I suffered for it. But what she didn't realize was that I was ready. She thought I would panic, that I'd fold under pressure, but she was wrong. I had been waiting for this moment, preparing for it. She thought she had the upper hand, but I was always one step ahead. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up, pacing the house, going over every possible scenario in my head. I knew Gloria wouldn't stop until she had destroyed everything. She would go after the house, the money, hell, maybe even try to drag my reputation through the mud, but I wasn't about to let her win. Not after everything she had done. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I told him everything, the affair, the evidence, the stalking. He was on board immediately, already laying the groundwork for what was going to be a brutal divorce. Gloria had made the first move, but I was going to finish it. A few days later, I got an email from Paul, my IT friend. He had managed to recover some files from Gloria's cloud account, files she had thought were deleted. What I found in those files made my blood run cold. Not only were there more texts between her and Brad, but there were also conversations with other men, some I had never even heard of. It wasn't just an affair with one man. She had been cheating on me with multiple men for God knows how long. Some of the messages were graphic, detailing meetups in hotel rooms, back seats of cars, and even our own home while I was at work. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the video. It was grainy, taken from a hidden camera, but it was unmistakably our bedroom. Gloria and Brad were there, on our bed, laughing and talking before things escalated. My hands shook as I watched them together, my mind screaming for me to stop, but I couldn't. I had to see it. I had to know. At the end of the video, Gloria looked directly at the camera and whispered, "He'll never know." But I did know now. And the anger that had been simmering beneath the surface exploded into a rage I could barely contain. The next day, I served her with divorce papers. She didn't see it coming. For weeks, she had tried to contact me, pleading for me to talk to her, to hear her out, but I ignored every message, every call. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her choices. I wanted her to suffer like I had. The day the papers arrived, she showed up at the house, banging on the door, screaming for me to let her in, but I didn't. I stood by the window watching her rage, her carefully constructed world unraveling right in front of her. She yelled, she cried, she begged. But I remained silent, my heart hardened by everything I had uncovered. She could scream all she wanted, but there was no going back, not now. Weeks passed, and the legal battle began. Gloria fought for everything, half the house, half the savings, even alimony. She painted herself as the victim, trying to spin the story in her favor. But the evidence I had was undeniable. The judge saw right through her lies. The day we finally stood in court, she wouldn't even look at me. Her lawyer argued that she had been a devoted wife, that the affair had been a moment of weakness, but when I presented the photos, the texts, and the video, her face went pale. There was no more hiding, no more lying. The masks had fallen off, and all that was left was the ugly truth. The judge ruled in my favor. When it was over, I walked out of the courtroom feeling hollow. The fight was over. But I didn't feel victorious. There was no satisfaction in what had happened, just a deep, aching emptiness where my life had once been. Gloria tried to approach me outside the courthouse, but I didn't stop. I didn't need to hear her apologies or her excuses. I had already heard enough. As I walked away, I realized that this was the end of one chapter, but the beginning of another. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain. I was free. Freedom is a strange thing. After years of living in the tangled web of lies and betrayal, being free felt hollow. Like I had emerged from a battle only to find that everything around me was still smoldering, the wreckage of my life scattered in all directions. Gloria was out of my life, legally severed from me in every way that mattered. But the damage she had caused was everywhere, in every corner of my mind, in every quiet moment when I was alone with my thoughts.
I spent the first few weeks after the divorce trying to regain a sense of normalcy. But what was normal now? The routine I'd had before work, home, the comforting presence of someone I loved was gone. The house felt too big, too empty. Every room reminded me of what had happened, what I'd lost. I found myself avoiding the bedroom altogether, opting for the couch instead. as if pretending the betrayal hadn't happened there might make it hurt less.
But the hurt was always there. It lingered in the quiet moments, in the late nights when sleep was elusive, in the mornings when I woke up and had to remind myself that she was gone. I ran into Brad about a month after the divorce. It was at a local bar, one I hadn't been to in a while. I didn't plan to see him, it just happened. He was there, sitting at the bar, a drink in hand, talking to some woman I didn't recognize. When he saw me, his expression faltered. For a split second, I saw guilt in his eyes, maybe even regret. But then he looked away, as if he could erase the whole ordeal by pretending I didn't exist. I wasn't going to let him off that easy. I walked over, my pulse quickening with every step. He didn't turn to face me, but I could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy. "Brad," I said, my voice low, steady. He finally turned, his eyes meeting mine. The woman beside him sensed the shift in energy and quickly excused herself, leaving us alone at the bar. "I was wondering when we'd run into each other," he said, trying to sound casual, but there was an edge to his voice. He took a slow sip of his drink, as if he could hide behind the glass. "You really thought you could keep it going?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Thought I'd never figure it out." He sighed, setting the drink down. "Look, Adam, I didn't set out to hurt you. It just happened." That was the same excuse Gloria had given me, and hearing it come from him only reignited the rage I'd tried so hard to bury. "You didn't set out to hurt me," I repeated, my hands balling into fists. "You slept with my wife, in my house. You think I'm supposed to believe this was just some accident?" He didn't respond, his silence speaking volumes. There was no justification he could offer, no apology that would make up for what he'd done, and we both knew it. I stared at him, the anger swirling in my chest, but I didn't lash out. As much as I wanted to beat him senseless, I knew it wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't erase what had happened, and it wouldn't make me feel better. So instead, I just shook my head and walked away, leaving him there staring into his drink like the coward he was. The encounter with Brad was a turning point for me. I realized that I couldn't keep living in the past, couldn't keep replaying the betrayal over and over in my mind. It was like a wound that refused to heal because I wouldn't stop picking at it. But I was tired of being angry. Tired of letting what they had done define me. Gloria and Brad had already taken enough from me. I wasn't going to let them take my future too. I started making changes. The first step was getting rid of the house. I couldn't stay there anymore. It was too full of memories, both good and bad, and it felt like living in a mausoleum of my failed marriage. I put it up for sale, and within a few months it was gone, along with all the ghosts it held. I found a smaller place, an apartment downtown, with just enough space for me. It wasn't much, but it was mine. A clean slate. The first night I spent there was the first night I had slept soundly in months. No more haunted rooms, no more reminders of what had been, just quiet. And for the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't scare me. Life after the divorce wasn't easy, but it was better. The weight of the lies and betrayal lifted slowly, like a fog clearing after a long storm. I reconnected with friends I had lost touch with during the mess of it all. People who had known me before Gloria, who reminded me of who I used to be, before my life had been twisted by her deceit. I even started dating again, though cautiously. The first time I went out with someone new, it felt strange, like I was stepping into a world I no longer belonged to. But the woman, her name was Emily, was kind, funny, and, most importantly, honest. We went out for coffee, and she didn't ask too many questions about my past. She didn't pry. She let me be myself, whoever that was now, and it felt good. Emily and I didn't last, but that was okay. She wasn't a rebound. She was more like a reminder that life could go on, that not everyone was out to betray you. That trust, while fragile, could be rebuilt. Months passed, and slowly the anger faded. It never disappeared completely. There were still moments when I'd think about Gloria and feel that old fire burning in my chest. But it was manageable now. I had learned to live with it, to let it fuel me rather than destroy me. One day, out of the blue, I received a letter from Gloria. It wasn't a long letter, just a few lines, handwritten, like she used to do back when we were dating. She apologized, again. Said she hoped I was doing well, that she had been going to therapy and was working on herself. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. We were done. She had made her choices, and I had made mine. The chapter of our lives that we had shared was closed, and I wasn't about to reopen it, not even for closure. In the end, the scars of what had happened would always be there. I would always carry the memories of Gloria's betrayal, of Brad's smug face, of the nights spent lying awake, wondering how I had missed the signs. But those scars didn't define me. They were just a part of my story, one chapter in a much longer book. And as I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, looking out over the city, I realized something. I had survived.